I've been a handyman for over 5 years now. It's not the most glamorous job, but it pays the bills. I've fixed everything from broken faucets to leaky roofs. My workday is usually the same: go to the job, fix what needs fixing, and get paid. Easy, no drama. But today was different. I got a call earlier in the morning. It was from a woman named Lila, who needed some help with a door that wasn't quite fitting into its frame. Nothing major, she said, just a simple fix. The pay was good, $1,600 for an hour or so of work. For a guy like me, that was more than enough to get me through the week. So, of course, I said yes. I drove across town to her address, which turned out to be in a much nicer part of the city than I was used to. Big houses, neatly manicured lawns, and expensive cars lined the streets. I parked in the driveway of her place and stood there for a second, trying to get a feel for what I was walking into. I rang the doorbell and waited. When it opened, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. There, standing in front of me, was Lila. I mean, she was stunning. She looked like she could have stepped straight out of a magazine, tall, blonde, with sharp features that could have belonged to a model. I wasn't used to seeing women like her in this part of my life. "Hi, Edward," she said with a warm smile, clearly already aware of who I was. "Thanks for coming." "Of course," I said, trying not to seem too flustered. "Where's the door?" She let me inside, and I followed her down the hallway to the door she was talking about. It wasn't anything too complicated, just a standard wooden door that seemed to have shifted slightly out of place. The frame was a little out of alignment, so the door didn't close properly. I could fix it in no time. I bent down to take a look, feeling a bit more at ease now that I was focused on the work. "Yeah, this will be a quick fix," I said, looking up at her. "I'll just need to adjust the frame a bit, maybe plane the door slightly. Should take about an hour, maybe an hour and a half." She nodded, still smiling. "Perfect. I'm in no rush." I got to work right away. It was a typical job, nothing complicated, just the kind of thing I'd done 100 times before. As I worked, I couldn't help but notice how calm and collected she was. She didn't seem like the type of person who needed a handyman at all. Everything about her screamed wealthy and refined. I finished adjusting the door sooner than expected. It wasn't a hard fix, but I took my time, making sure everything was aligned perfectly. After tightening the last screw and giving the door a final check, I stood back and wiped my hands on my jeans. "Finished," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "The door should be good now." She walked over and gave the door a gentle push, checking to make sure it was working properly. "It's perfect. Thank you so much." I felt a sense of pride in my work, as usual. But then, she did something that caught me completely off guard. She reached into her wallet and pulled out a $100 bill. "Here," she said, handing me the money. "For your trouble. You were so quick, and the door's as good as new." I was a little taken aback, not because of the tip. A $100 tip wasn't uncommon for a job like this, but because of how natural and casual she made it seem. I'd never had a customer act so friendly, so at ease. Most people just paid and went on with their day. But she wasn't done. "Actually," she said, her tone changing slightly, "I was wondering if you might want to stick around for a bit. Maybe get some coffee or dinner? I don't have any plans tonight, and honestly, I could use the company." I was frozen for a second. I mean, who wouldn't be? I'm a handyman. I fix things. That's what I do. Women like Lila don't invite guys like me to spend time with them, especially after just a few minutes of fixing a door. I stammered, not sure how to respond. I looked at her, trying to gauge whether she was serious or just being polite. She must have seen the hesitation on my face, because she quickly added, "I know this is probably a weird request, but, to be honest, things have been kind of boring lately. I haven't had any excitement, any adventure, and I thought, why not? You seem like an interesting guy, and I thought maybe we could spend the evening together." I promise I'm not asking for anything weird. I don't know. I could use a bit of fun. I didn't know what to think. It was completely unexpected, and I wasn't sure if I should be flattered or confused. I mean, I was just a guy fixing a door, right? But the idea of spending time with someone like her, someone so clearly out of my league, was, to put it bluntly, intriguing. All right, I said, trying to act casual about it. I guess I don't have any plans. Why not? She smiled brightly, as if she'd been waiting for me to say yes. Great. I have an idea. There's a spot up on the hill where you can see the whole city. It's perfect for a little getaway. I'll grab a small picnic basket, and we can head there. I was still processing everything that was happening, but I figured I might as well go with the flow. Life's too short not to take chances, right? I'll go get changed, I said, heading back toward the door. I'll meet you in a bit. She nodded, her smile still wide. I'll be waiting. As I drove back home to change and meet her, I had no idea what to expect. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of excitement. I wasn't sure where this night would go, but something told me it wasn't going to be like anything I'd ever experienced before. There was a certain chemistry in the air, a kind of ease that I wasn't used to. And for the first time in a while, I wasn't worried about the future. I wasn't concerned about whether I was messing up or if I was being judged. With her, it was just comfortable. At some point, we both leaned back on the blanket, looking up at the stars. She pointed out a few constellations, and we ended up talking about everything, from childhood memories to our favorite books and movies. It was the kind of conversation you have with someone you've known for years, not someone you just met hours ago. Then, almost without thinking, I reached over and touched her hand. It wasn't anything grand, just a simple gesture. But the moment I did, I could feel a shift in the air around us. She looked at me, her gaze soft and warm. And then, she slowly leaned in, closing the gap between us. Before I knew it, we were kissing. It wasn't rushed or forced. It felt natural, like something that had been building up all night, even though neither of us had really said anything about it. The kiss was soft, tentative at first, then deepened as the moment stretched on. Her lips were warm, tasting faintly of wine. And when she pulled back, I could see the spark of something in her eyes. That was nice, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, not really knowing what to say. The kiss had left me a little breathless, but I didn't want to overthink it. We were here, in this beautiful spot, and everything felt right. We didn't talk much after that. We just lay there, side by side, watching the stars and listening to the sounds of the night around us. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I wasn't thinking about work or what the next day would bring. I was just here with her, and that was enough. The next morning, I woke up with a head full of thoughts. Lila and I had spent the night talking, laughing, and connecting. But it was more than just a casual encounter. The kiss was still fresh in my mind, replaying over and over. What was I even doing? A part of me felt like I should be cautious, but another part felt like I had never been so free. It was a feeling I wasn't used to, but I couldn't deny that I liked it. I grabbed my coffee and tried to shake off the thoughts of last night, but my mind kept drifting back to her. She was different from anyone I'd ever met. There was something magnetic about her, something beyond her beauty. She had this energy, this presence, that was impossible to ignore. I had spent years working as a handyman, going through the motions of life. But now I was thinking about things I had never thought about before. About her. About what could happen between us. About what I was even looking for in life. As I sipped my coffee, my phone buzzed. A text from Lila. Hey Edward, I had a great time last night. Can we meet again today? I stared at the screen for a second, my heart racing a little. A part of me was eager to see her again, to spend more time with her. But another part of me hesitated. I didn't want to rush into anything, especially when I had no idea what she was really looking for. Yes, sure. When? I replied, trying to play it cool. How about later? I'll pick you up. I typed out a quick response, then put my phone down. There was a knot in my stomach, but I couldn't explain why. I had no reason to feel anxious. I had spent time with plenty of women before. But this felt different. That afternoon, she arrived at my place looking as stunning as ever. Her hair was perfectly styled, and she wore a simple yet elegant outfit that made my heart skip a beat. I opened the door, trying my best to act normal, but my nerves were getting the best of me. Hey, I said, smiling, though it felt a little forced. Hey, Edward, she replied, her smile warm and inviting. Ready for another adventure? I nodded, trying to shake off the unease. Yeah, let's go. She led the way to her car, and we drove to a small park on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was peaceful. The weather was perfect, the kind of sunny day that made you forget about everything else in the world. We took a seat on one of the benches, and I tried to focus on the moment. But I couldn't help but wonder, why was she so insistent on spending time with me? So, she said, turning to face me. Tell me something. What do you really want, Edward? I blinked, surprised by the question. I wasn't sure how to answer. I had never really thought about it before. What did I want? A part of me wanted to say I want to be with you, but that was a risky answer. Instead, I said the first thing that came to mind. I guess I want something real, I said, unsure if it was the right answer. Something more than just the same old thing, you know? I've been working for so long, doing the same job every day, and sometimes I wonder if there's more to life than that. She nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. I get that. I've been feeling the same way. Like there's something missing. She hesitated before continuing. That's why I invited you out last night. It wasn't just about having a good time. It was about feeling alive again. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had no idea if she felt the same way I did, but in that moment, I realized, she wasn't just looking for a fling. She was searching for more. Just like I was. What do you think about us? She asked, suddenly, her voice quiet. I was caught off guard, but it didn't take me long to answer. I think. I exhaled, searching for the right words. I think there's something here. Something I can't quite put my finger on, but it feels right. Her gaze softened, and for a moment, time slowed down. She moved closer, her eyes locked on mine. And without saying a word, she leaned in. I kissed her again. But this time, it felt different. It wasn't just about passion. It was about connection. About two people who had somehow found each other in the middle of their own uncertainties. Who had found something unexpected in each other. When we pulled back, I could see the same emotions mirrored in her eyes. This wasn't just about one night anymore, it was about something more. Something that had the potential to change everything. Do you feel that? She whispered, her voice trembling just slightly. I nodded. Yeah, I feel it. We stayed there for a while, just sitting together, not saying much. The silence was comfortable, but it also held a quiet intensity that I couldn't ignore. I had no idea where this was headed, but for the first time in a long time, I was okay with not knowing. With Lila, the uncertainty felt exciting, not terrifying. As the sun began to set, we got up and walked to the car. There was an unspoken understanding between us. Neither of us needed to say anything, we both knew that something was changing. Something that neither of us had expected, but both of us had been craving. I didn't know where this would go. I didn't know if this was just a fleeting moment or if it would turn into something more. But in that moment, with the cool evening air around us, I didn't care. I was willing to find out. The next few days passed in a blur. Every time I thought about Lila, my mind raced. What had started as a simple job, me fixing her door, had turned into something far more complicated and far more thrilling than I had ever anticipated. Each moment with her was filled with laughter, passion, and an undeniable connection that seemed to grow stronger by the day. It wasn't just physical. There was something deeper between us, something that neither of us had expected, but both of us had craved for a long time. But now, as I sat in my apartment, watching the clock ticking away on the wall, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anxiety creeping in. It was time to face the truth. I needed to know what Lila really wanted. We had shared intimate moments, our late-night conversations, the times we kissed under the stars, but where was this heading? Did she see this as something more than just a fleeting adventure? Or was she just looking for something to distract herself from the monotony of her life? I tried to push the questions out of my mind. After all, what did I know about love? About real relationships? I had spent years working as a handyman, fixing things, fixing problems. But now, my own heart felt broken wide open, and I wasn't sure how to fix it. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lila. "Hey Edward, want to meet up tonight? I was thinking we could go for dinner. I'd love to talk more about us." I stared at the message for a while. The words seemed innocent enough, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a casual invitation. My heart skipped a beat. Was she ready to talk about what this was? What it could be? I didn't know if I was ready for that conversation, but I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. I quickly typed out a response. "Yeah, I'd love that. What time?" She replied almost immediately. "How about 7? I felt a wave of nervous excitement wash over me as I prepared for the evening. What was I supposed to wear? I wasn't usually the type to stress over things like that, but tonight felt different. I wanted to make a good impression. I wanted to show her that I was serious, that I wasn't just a guy who showed up to fix things and leave. I was someone who wanted to be with her. Someone who wanted to know where this was going. By the time I arrived at the restaurant, my nerves had settled a little, but my mind was still racing. I walked in and spotted her immediately. She looked even more stunning than the last time I saw her, wearing a simple yet elegant dress that made her stand out in the crowd. Her eyes caught mine as I walked toward her, and for a moment, I forgot about everything else. She smiled warmly, and it felt like everything else in the room disappeared. "Hey," she said softly as I sat down across from her. "I'm glad you could make it." "Of course," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I wouldn't miss it." The waiter came by to take our orders, and for a while, we focused on the small talk, the casual conversation that kept things light. But there was an underlying tension between us. Something we both knew was there. Something that was building but hadn't been addressed yet. The dinner was delicious, but I couldn't stop thinking about what she had said in her text. "I'd love to talk more about us." "So," she began, her voice a little softer now, "I think we need to have that conversation." I nodded, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. I took a deep breath, not sure where this would go, but knowing it was something we had to do. "I agree," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "I've been thinking about this too." Lila took a sip of her wine, her eyes never leaving mine. She seemed calm, collected. But there was something vulnerable in her gaze, something that told me she was just as uncertain as I was about all of this. "Edward," she started, her voice barely above a whisper, "you know that I'm not looking for just a fling. I'm not someone who just goes around having casual relationships." I nodded, understanding where she was coming from. "Neither am I," I said. "I think there's something real between us." She smiled, her eyes softening. "I feel the same way," she admitted. "But there's something I need to be honest about with you." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" She hesitated for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully. "I've been running away from things for a long time. I built this life for myself, but sometimes I feel like I'm living in a bubble. I need something real. I need to know if I can trust you, if this can be something more than just a moment in time." I felt a rush of emotions, relief, hope, and a deep sense of understanding. She wasn't looking for something fleeting either. She was looking for something lasting. Something meaningful. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I could be that for you, I said without thinking. I could be the person you trust. I'm not perfect, but I want to be there for you, Lila. I want this to be real too. Her expression softened, and she reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. I know, she whispered. I just didn't want to rush things. But now, I think we should take this one step at a time. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. One step at a time sounds good to me. We sat there for a while, just holding hands, letting the conversation settle between us. The uncertainty had turned into something else, a quiet understanding that this was just the beginning of whatever we were going to become. It was the kind of connection I had never expected to find. But now that it was here, I wasn't willing to let it go. As we left the restaurant, I walked her to her car, the night air cool and comforting. She kissed me gently on the cheek before getting in, her eyes filled with promise. I'm looking forward to what's next, she said softly. Me too, I replied, watching her drive off into the night. And just like that, I knew everything had changed. This was no longer about fixing doors. This was about two people finding something real in a world that often felt uncertain. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited about the future.